Hey, it's Mazzy and welcome back. The best box set of 2025 so far, according to me. 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 This is my favorite box set of 2025. And 2 months ago, I made a video announcing the pre-sale of this release. Now, there'll be a link at the back of this to that video, so I'm not going to get in deep talking about the Small Faces, the band, the history of the Autumn Stone. But this was the original 1969 release as a what people would now call a cash grab to attempt to save Immediate Records. Andrew Loog Oldham's failing label, and the Small Faces were really the heroes of the label, and they were trying to get their cash flow going and keep the label alive. And the Faces had already split up. Steve Marriott had moved on to Humble Pie, still with Immediate, and of course the rest of the Small Faces grabbed two taller people and became the Faces. But that is more in detail in that video, and you can find many documentaries on the Small Faces, the good, bad, and the ugly of their career and their relationship with the record companies, that whole storyline. But I am excited to showcase the box set that finally came out. Now, if you go back to the Hoffman forums, it's where I first learned about this. That thread on this started way back in 2017. So, 8 years later, it's finally here. And every few months, that thread would come alive, like what's happening. And this was really the love of Kenny Jones, the remaining member. Ian McLaughlin was still alive when they worked on this, but Kenny Jones, the drummer, is obviously the final member. And I want to talk about this. I did compare it to my original UK copy here. And I talked about this, and I really love this comp. It's a comp, essentially. And what was interesting about it at the time, it was one of the first times, I believe, that a label was able to license music from another label, the early work of the same artist. And the Small Faces had been on Decca, and they licensed the material. So this really was a kind of a best of with some deeper cuts, some singles, some B-sides, some live tracks. So I want to showcase the differences between the new box set, in box format, a 3-record set, opposed to the original 2 LP set. Now, this is 3 LP deluxe box set, newly remastered and expanded, previously unreleased tracks, Autumn Stone and gold vinyl, exclusive Jared Mankiewicz art print, 68-page hand-bound book. Gerald Mankiewicz was a photographer who worked a lot, almost exclusively for them. Most of the photographs in this book are from him, and there's a conversation with Kenny Jones and him, which I really like. And I'll talk about that a little bit as we get on and show you a selection of some of the images in the book, some of the proof sheets. Went back to the negatives and pulled those up. This is curated by Kenny Jones. The box opens up and has this art print of Gerald Mankiewicz. This is from the photo session for the cover of the album. Now, one interesting thing they get into quite a bit, and Kenny Jones brings up with the conversation with Gerald, that Gerald worked independently with Immediate, worked on a lot of the covers, a lot of photographers for a lot of the artists at the time. He had concepts of the cover, but he wasn't actually the designer specifically, but he came up with this sort of autumn overlay. And there was some discussion in that conversation that why wasn't the band's name put on it? Now, think about this. First of all, their photographs are here, but unlike a lot of bands of the day, they aren't maybe quite as recognizable. Think of the first album that I recall that didn't have the band's name on the cover was Rubber Soul. But of course it had a full bleed photograph of the Beatles, who were arguably the most recognizable band in the land, in the world at the time. So it would have behooved this label to put Small Faces on the cover. That has been remedied with this box with a gold foil embossed debossed stamping there. Autumn stone. Beautiful, beautiful set. Beautifully designed. Heavy stock on the set. And inside, the 3 albums, remember, were expanded from a 2-record set to 3. They're in the singular slipcase. And with each of them, they're photographed by Gerald Mankiewicz. Outtakes from that photo session. 1, 2, and 3. There are no inner sleeves aside from that. I did add my MoFi inners just to kind of protect them. I'm not always one that does that, but let me give you a taste. It's got that autumn style coloring of a label now there, and then a sort of a recreation of the immediate label. Done really nice. Now, my pressings were quiet, were flat, and they reworked this set completely. What I absolutely love about this set, they reworked the entire track order. Side 1 starts in the same manner as the original 1969 edition, but then they add a couple of tracks onto the first LP, and everything else is sort of reworked. And they took out the live tracks and put those on side 6. On the 3rd record, the 2nd side. So all those live tracks are relegated to the final disc, which is really, I think, great. Because what I didn't like about this album, thinking of like the Beatles anthology, I always talk about volume 1 of the Beatles anthology where they mix those live tracks. And this was a time when live tracks was still a little archaic in the rock thing. And as good as these are, they're still, not the greatest fidelity, but they're far superior than what was on the original Autumn Stone at that time. And so that putting them together really makes it for a clean live listen. They took away some of the extra overdubs of crowd noises, although those were there. They corrected the speed. Apparently the speed was off back in 1969, and a lot of the recordings here were improved from that time. Now, these are cut separately for the CD and the vinyl. Separate mastering for vinyl, separate mastering for CD. There is a digital step on the vinyl here, and I think apparently it was necessary. According to the curators, obviously Kenny Jones, the project coordinator Nigel Adams, and produced for this release by Rob Kager. I want to read a couple of notes here in the book about the tapes and the curation of this and how these were sourced. All the Decca songs are from the master tapes and not the versions from the original Autumn Stone LP with added fake stereo panning effects. The version of Sha-La-La-La on the original LP was cut off azimuth. The mono sound was off center and has been corrected. So they actually went through and carefully, it's probably why it took so long, make sure the sources were accurate. And even though they used a digital version before they cut to lathe, they came from the analog masters and they corrected any mistakes that were on the original and upgraded them. The stereo version of Afterglow on the original piece spliced tape from the mono version to effect a repair. This has been corrected by using the version from Oddgon's Nut Gone Flake, original stereo master. So they really took their time and archivally preserved these records and made it the best source. Now, I did compare the sound of this new box set to my original 1969. Now, my 1969 is well played, but I found that there's so much more clarity in the new set. It was like night and day. Now, I don't know if it partly is because of groove wear, although I take care of my copy I got probably in the 1970s. I can't remember if it was a new or used copy at the time. And it sounds really good, but nowhere as near as good as this. I mean, again, the clarity, the mid-range, even the highs are better. I'm one that likes to stay away from brightness. There's no brightness in this, but there's some highs that seem to be knocked off on my original 1969 Autumn record, and it's been corrected here, or at least the pressings and the mastering of this really sounds great. As I said earlier, they reworked the entire running order of this set for the most part. After the first side of the first LP, it changes here and there. So there's some differences in that. But on side 5, the extra disc, remember the first one was a 2-record set, this is a 3-record set, but side 5 is a revelation in so many ways, because most of it, except for the last 2 tracks, I believe, are sort of acoustic demos, works in progress. That's kind of the sound that Steve Marriott and the rest of the band really kind of wanted to get with their subsequent, what would have been the next album, this album, or at least the beginnings of what this album initially was going to be. But Andrew Loog Oldham apparently wasn't a fan, wanted more rock and stuff, and that's kind of why I guess he stayed with Humble Pie and let the other members of the band, the other 3 members, go, and they would obviously go on to start the Faces with Rod Stewart and Ron Wood. But side 5 has these acoustic versions of songs. There's a wonderful version that opens up of Autumn Stone, beautiful ballad, beautifully acoustic recorded. And that goes into another recording of Red Balloon, that Tim Hardin song that they had recorded earlier. That's on the proper album, or at least the first 2 records of this. Just a really wonderful mixture, stripped down acoustic, what we now call unplugged. I think this is a total success. It's got a wonderful vibe to it. Now, I love this book. I love that it has a long introduction by Kenny Jones as he was working on this, talking about the years with Immediate, how labels pretty much screwed this band, didn't get paid. Story that's familiar for so many bands, especially in the 1960s into the 1970s. But Kenny wants to preserve the sound. Small Faces doesn't always get a lot of love compared to a lot of bands at the time, and they were one of the great 1960s swingin' London mod bands. They became sort of teen idols in a way. One of their much bigger in the UK than in the States, and they also had this great soulful sound to them. Of course, Steve Marriott is probably one of the 3 or 4 great British blue-eyed soul singers. Maybe just parallel with Eric Burton, maybe even a little better than Van Morrison at the time with them. Certainly better than Mick Jagger. Mick Jagger had a swagger and a great bluesy sound, but Marriott has the balls and the voice and just really nails it. But he could also be really beautiful. Of course, Ronnie Lane adds a little bit of that poppier side to it, but they both do it. Obviously in Ichigo Park and One Tin Soldier. It's just a wonderful, wonderful mix of music. As I said in the earlier video, one of my favorite songs on here is All or Nothing. And I compared it to the beginning of the Beatles' Rain. It had that kind of drum beat that Kenny Jones does, similar in a way to what Ringo does on Rain, but the guitar riff, that deep, great guitar riff of the time, is right in that pocket of Rain. There's a live version of that too, which is excellent. Again, it's that influence. Did they come up with this separately? Who knows? Who cares? It's a great song. Some of their songs have sort of that music hall sound, like Lazy Sunday Afternoon. That's on Ogden Nut. Again, that kind of interesting conceptual album that was massive in the UK. More soulful than The Who, but a different band. And again, just another great band in London. And unfortunately, the legacy hasn't lasted to equal what these records are about. So as of this recording in May 2025, this is only available through the band's website in the UK. You have to order it directly. It does come on vinyl, limited edition vinyl of 3,000 copies. I am number 1816. It's put out by Nice, which is an independent label of the band, distributed through Charlie Records out of the UK. And again, you can only buy it directly at this point. Beautiful, heavy stock here with the obligatory pickup ribbon, so you can get your albums and your book out of it nicely. And the book is a wonderful hardback book. Now, the CD does not come with this type of hardback book. I haven't seen the CD. I'm not ordering the CD, but it's really beautifully produced here. It's got a great introduction of Kenny Jones's memories, as I said earlier. Interviews talking about the Don Arden years with Decca Records. Sketches from Kenny Jones that would have been for album covers and projects. But beautiful intimate pictures, beautiful proof sheets from Gerald Markowitz, and just a wonderful time of that swinging London from 1965 to about 1969. Has the original cover, has the original Decca sleeves of the singles. It has the labels of the immediate series of records put out by the Small Faces. Shows picture sleeves and posters and an essay about this record and the fall, the demise of immediate record label on here. It's just really, really a pleasure to read this as you're listening to the record. I love this set, and to me, this is the perfect style of anthologies for a band. But I think this is a good representation, a good legacy of a band that should be known by more people, revered, and especially listened to. Remember, it's the music. The best box set of 2025, according to Maslow. Autumn Stone by the Small Faces. I'll put a link below to their website. I did buy my copy. This was not a promo, but when I'm a fan of something, I just want to let people know it's out there and check it out. Thanks for watching. Mazzy loves you.